Hey everyone, it's Chris, and welcome to another episode of my exciting series covering a discovery of witches. In this video, we'll be taking a look at episode 6. If this is your first time here, I take TV shows and movies based on books and compare and contrast them to the source material, so there might be spoilers ahead. Viewer beware. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of my future videos, and click the notification icon to join the notification squad, as it were, and be the first to know when something new drops. Okay, we have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's just jump into it. First up, we're going to talk about Satu. So all of this was mostly the same with a few important differences. Satu never offers or cares really to help Diana learn how to control her magic. She does tell her that this wasn't what she wanted to do since they were both witches, but that is about as far as the niceties quote-unquote go. One thing that they left out though, that I think would have been nice to have in the episode, was an accusation that Matthew had used his blood on Diana to ensnare her, so to speak, to put her in his thrall. When Diana is told this, she remembers a few instances that cast small seeds of doubt in her heart toward Matthew. They reference an ancient witch that Gerbert had done this to, Meridiana. In the novels, Gerbert and Satu reference her, but she isn't present in the story. In the show, of course, the head that he consults is the head of Meridiana, as we discover at the end of this episode. There were some other big changes in this part of the story as well. Like, believe it or not, Satu was much more brutal in the novels. Her interrogation was much longer, more painful, and progressively more desperate on the part of Satu. Another massive change is the absence of ghosts. Diana inherited the ability to see and communicate with ghosts from her mother, I believe, and it was here that it manifested the most forcefully for the first time. We get some of that from the show, when she sees her mother and father, but in the novels, she sees a number of ghosts, not just her parents, to great dramatic effect. Since she could see the ghosts, in the novel, her mother appears the whole time. She's there with her, constantly, lending strength and comfort to Diana, which allows her to survive the situation. Her father does appear, but later when she hears the story about the prince and flying. I loved this part of the story from the novels. The concept that the love of a mother could reach beyond the grave and continue to protect her child. So I was really bummed that they didn't have it in the show. The other big change here was why Satu dropped Diana into the oubliette, the pit. In the show, it is out of rage and anger after Diana fought back and seemingly at some point canceled out Satu's magic temporarily. In the novels, this just does not happen. Diana cannot fight back physically. She's able to shield her mind with her mother's help, but physical attacks just aren't happening. Because as we learn in this episode, she has been spellbound. Satu, having exhausted all the techniques and ideas that she had to break Diana, decides to go, for reinforcements, which meant stashing her someplace safe while she would be away. She deposits Diana in the pit and then flies out and away to get the other two witches that were on the congregation. And also the bits with Gerbert never happened, other than the opening moments when he asked to examine her. Whew, you can already tell this is going to be a long video. Next up, we have Matthew and Baldwin. This was spot on and completely different at the same time. In the novels, Baldwin is there because Isabeau has contacted him to let him know what was going on. It was the first he had heard of the relationship between Matthew and Diana. As we know from the show's version of the story, the congregation already knows about it, and he was coming to Septur to retrieve our wayward witch. Upon arriving, Baldwin attacks and overpowers Matthew since he is the much older brother and much more powerful, strictly speaking. They have a much longer altercation, and it is only through the help of Isabeau that things are brought to a head and tempers calmed, so to speak. One of the things I really loved about these moments in the novel was that it showed why Baldwin is the head of the family. Matthew is all rage and desperation, barely making rational decisions, and needed Baldwin to slow him down, make him think through things, so that they could find and rescue Diana. The bit with the Knights of Lazarus was the same, with one notable exception. In the novel, Baldwin scoffs at Matthew invoking the Knights, to which Matthew responds, "Cool. Just, forfeit all your lands, rights, and title, and get out of my house." Paraphrasing there, of course. Apparently, Septur was left to the Knights, not the Declarements. Isabeau and the rest of the family are allowed to stay there as a courtesy. It appears going back on your oath as a knight means losing everything, not just your honor. This gives you a clearer picture of why Baldwin changes his tune so quickly. Next up, we're going to talk about Diana. So the biggest change here, other than the bits we have already pointed out, is that she isn't released from her spell binding. In the novels, the binding is described as ribbons wrapped around her body. Her mother, being a powerful seer, knew that at this moment, the only way for Diana to survive would be to fly out of the pit. So that individual spell binding was removed. In the novels, it is described as a silver ribbon being untangled from her body that Diana then throws into the air. Another important moment is that when Matthew and Baldwin finally find her, Diana is unsure of Matthew based on the things that Satu had said, and it is her parents, who are still there with her, that convince her that she can trust him because he was the one they had all been waiting for since the moment she was born. She imagines a silver ribbon wrapping her and then tugs on the end, unraveling it. She is then able to fly up to Matthew and Baldwin, but the rest of her magic is still spellbound. It takes much longer for that to change. We might see more about that in the next episode. Maybe it was just the one ribbon, so to speak, but it seems like in the show she is now completely free of the bindings. Okay, we're going to look at Gerbert at the castle next. This was all new for the show as well. We do see him and Domenico at the castle in the beginning, but Satu makes them leave. From that point on, the story focuses on the two of them only during the scenes at La Pierre. And of course that means he doesn't come down and chat with Satu after she drops Diana down the pit, and he doesn't take her to the room with Meridiana's head and threaten her, etc. The one thing we do discover, though, from his time at the castle that is not in the show, is that he possessed Ashmole 782 at one time, stolen from a wizard in Spain of all places, 1,000 years ago. And it had been under a spell even then. Okay, next up we have Examination at Septur. A lot of this was the same, with a few notable exceptions. As I said before, the injuries that Diana received from Satu were much, much worse in the novels. Her entire back was ruined, burned black, bruised, and torn. So much so that they had to soak her clothes off in the tub. The reveal of her back was much more dramatic as well. Given the seriousness of her injuries, she passes out from the shock of seeing it, but not before she speaks to her dead mother, saying she kept her secrets inside just like her mother wanted. Another important moment that wasn't translated to the show was one where Matthew gave Diana a way out of their relationship. This might seem like a strange thing to miss, but it showed some very important things for both characters. Knowing the depth and intensity of Matthew's feelings for Diana, to have him stop and tell her that if the horrors she had just experienced had changed her mind about being with him, he would understand and respect her wishes is pretty astounding. Mating for a vampire is a serious thing in the All Souls world. It affects them in foundational ways. His life would effectively be over if he let her go, but he offers it anyway, out of his love and deep concern. And then Diana, who has just experienced trauma on a level that is nearly impossible to even guess at, let alone understand, responds with essentially, "Don't be an idiot." This is a pivotal moment for each of them individually, and just as importantly, for them as a couple. Another interesting change is that most of Diana's healing happens in Madison with her aunts. Sarah is skilled in healing magic, so an amazing amount can be corrected quickly when she's on the scene. It's in Madison that they found out, for instance, about the brand that Satu gave her, not in Septur. Again, it seems like a small thing, but it leads to a really amazing moment in the story. I suppose they could still make it happen in the show, and we'll find out in the next episode since it's set at the Bishop House. I just don't know if it'll have the same gravity and effect. Next up we have Blood on the Drum. First of all, the drum was not mentioned in the novel, so that's new, but it's awesome and cool, so no problem there. Near the end of the episode, we see Gerbert return to the castle, pick up the drum Satu used, and taste blood he found on it. This was new for the show, as I said before, and I assume important, or they wouldn't have added it like this. The question, of course, is whose blood is it? And can he glean any memories or knowledge from the blood if it is outside of the body when he tastes it? All of that should be interesting. Okay, rolling right along, we have Diana dealing with Satu. This was different. It wasn't in the novel and is a pretty strange change to her character, her being Diana. She reacts violently in the novels from time to time, but almost exclusively where there is a threat to Matthew, mirroring how he reacts to threats against her. I'm not sure what they're doing here, but it could either go really, really right or really, really wrong. Time will tell which it is. Okay, next we're going to look at the Knights of Lazarus. This was pretty spot on to the book, with the exception of one thing. In the novel, you see where Matthew gets the idea, and I really loved it. Isabeau had already thought ahead, and during an argument between Baldwin and Matthew, places the seeds of making this a matter for the knightly order. It was a nice moment that showed the cunning and fierce intelligence that Isabeau possesses, so it was a bit of a letdown for me that it was cut from the show. I really did love the moment where Baldwin gives Diana and Matthew parting advice. It's not exactly how it happened in the novel, but the spirit of it was perfect, which in the end is all that really matters. Okay, almost done. Next up, we have the Brazen Head. This was all new for the show, and I really dug it. It gives Satu another layer to her character, as well as gives you a real sense of the threat that Gerbert poses to the witches in the story, and, just as importantly, brings another aspect of the real Gerbert into the All Souls world. The real-life historical figure that this character was based on was a pope, and was really reputed to have a brazen head, which is a bronze mechanical head that told prophecies, basically a talking machine that told prophecies. One of the things I love so much about these books is that the author was able to take a really interesting historical person, place, or event, and then make it the foundation of something truly weird and wonderful in the novels. And the Brazen Head is just, another example. And finally, we have Sophie and Nathaniel. This was a great way to end the episode. In the novels, we meet Sophie and Nathaniel at the end of the book. They arrive at the bishop home shortly after Matthew and Diana do, but we don't get any of their backstory, much like Satu and Juliet. They just sort of drop into the story. Having their stories built up over the course of the series like this was great, and the timing of these events, Diana having her powers unbound and Sophie telling Agatha about her peculiar heritage, was really well done. You have this sense of events being set in motion that are about to push the creature world off its axis. And that is exactly what is coming. Okay, that's it for this video. I was able to get it out pretty quickly this time, which is what I'm going to try to have it out by Sunday from now on. I just had life get in the way. But yeah, fantastic episode, and another great example of where the show can make the story better than it was in the novel, because there were a number of places where that happened in this episode. And I just wanted to say thank you to all the people that have joined us here at CJD Explains, specifically from the All Souls world, all of you A Discovery of Witches fans. It means a lot to me that you've come and subscribed and you watch the videos. And most importantly, you're in the conversation. We have an amazing community of really loving people that treat each other with respect, and you've all just kind of folded into the community really well, and we're having these great conversations about stuff with respect and mutual love and admiration. So it means a lot to me that you're here and that you have become such a great part of the community, and I just hope that you continue to enjoy watching these videos. So that's it for me. This was a long one, but had to be because so much amazing stuff happened in the episode. I will see you again soon with another video, and until then, get a good book and read it.